Hi, my name's Richard Gilbert, and by the end of this speech, I want my audience to understand about the three-step creative writing process and how to properly apply it. We've all had essays due, or speeches to give, or even decided we were going to write a book one day. Well, we may sometimes have difficulty figuring out how to get that information, started. Where do we begin? How do we finally convert it to a usable format? Well, luckily, that's where the three-step creative writing process comes in. And while it was originally intended for writing books or poems or something like that, you'll find that it's easily adapted to various other mediums such as speeches, essays, or that final midterm you're just desperately trying to pass. So, what are the three steps? They're interestingly our main points for today as well. We have the idea gathering phase, the mind mapping phase, and finally converting to linear form. So where do we begin? We have to begin, of course, with idea gathering. We have to have information, after all, to know what to start with. The idea gathering phase is unique in the fact that it's not necessarily a matter of actually getting the facts on paper so much as it is getting the wheels turning in your brain. It's designed not necessarily to organize the information and know where to begin and where to start, as just generally getting all the information going, getting the brain thinking, and generally getting your thought process moving. For example, let's say we're going to go ahead and be writing up a paper for English class. We can go with monkeys, cars, limos, bananas. We can even draw like a little palm tree or something, little monkey head, koala bear or something. The whole point of it is to actually get the information down on paper. This can be sentences, symbols, ideas, whatever. The key is don't distract or don't get too creative with it, however. But do whatever you have to do in order to get the information down. Use shorthand, use sentences, use paragraphs if you need be. Don't necessarily constrain yourself to a nice, neat format. Write upside down, write sideways. Do whatever you have to do just to get the information going. It's usually done in about 5 to 10 minutes. You don't want to go much longer than that. And it's basically just an initial creative burst. Now, after the initial creative burst, you want to let it sit for a little bit. Hang it up somewhere where you can find it again later and come back to it. This way you can tack onto it later, build upon it, and generally get enough information to create a final product. Now, after you have this, you're going to want to go back and you're going to want to categorize the ideas before we move on to the mind mapping. This is going to let you trim off all the excess that you're not going to need for when you start narrowing it down for the final product. Categorizing basically involves going back and drawing shapes or symbols or other things basically to start grouping ideas and ruling out others. For example, let's go back to our board here. We might draw a box around monkey as being our main point. We may also draw a triangle around bugs or bananas, and we might draw a triangle around the tree. This will represent main ideas that we want to use. These are going to be our body paragraphs or supporting information. Now, once you've got it all categorized, you can start moving on to the mind mapping phase. The mind mapping phase is basically where we're going to take the information that we got from the idea gathering and start converting it into a format that our brain can understand and process in a logical, reasonable manner. One of the keys about the mind mapping phase is you're trying to engage your right brain. The right brain basically controls your artistic side and everything, and in order to do this, we're going to start using things like colors and symbols and stuff. One of the key notes, according to Tony Brenz in his book, The Mind Map, is that you want to use at least 3 colors when you're creating the main point that we're going to use. So for example, let's say we're going to do monkeys. We're going to do M-O-N-K-E-Y, and then we're going to use some purple or some blue or something to give it some color. Now the reason for all that color is it automatically engages the right brain and gets it working on the process as well. The mind mapping looks a lot like how you would start beginning to lay out an essay or a speech or something like that, in the fact that we have to go ahead and make sure we include all of our parts. So we know we're going to have our intro with the main points coming off of that. We're going to have our conclusion where we're going to summarize everything once again. And then, of course, we have to go back and go to our main body ideas. Again, remember to use colors and shapes and symbols as necessary. So we're going to have idea 1, we're going to have idea 2, and we're going to go back over here and go idea 3. Now what this does is it starts giving us a basic tree. You can kind of see how it's all starting to shape up. We have our main idea here, we have our introduction here, we have our conclusion and our points. The other thing to keep in mind is that we're also going to have things such as climax. We're going to make sure we keep our climax in there. This is, in narrative pieces, this is normally the hook, the thing that keeps people drawn in and makes them pay attention, makes them want to be a part of it. After this, we're going to go back to our main ideas and we're going to start putting in our information. Our information will be a little one word underneath all this stuff. Again, use colors and everything necessary. These colors and everything are going to help your mind when you look at this later to basically coordinate everything. If you have like a red section, you know all the red stuff has to go together. Blue has to go with blue, so on and so forth. Shapes and symbols do the same thing. This is going to help form the basis of the general premise of how we're going to outline everything and finally use it in our final product. So what is our final product? Remember that term I used earlier, converting to linear form? That is actually the final product, or in some cases maybe an initial draft. But for the purposes of the writing process, it's what we're attaining to. The linear form is basically the final piece you convert it to, whatever that might be. It might be full sentences, it might be paragraphs, it might be chapters, novels, books. In the cases of speeches, it might be a sentence, it might be a basic one-word outline. It's whatever you need to actually create a product that is usable to you. While some people can wing it necessarily off the mind map, that isn't necessarily recommended. Examples of converting to linear form would be our outlines that we did for speech, or even completed novels. All of these are examples of conversion into a perfect linear form and a final product and or draft that we use and turn in and submit as a graded product or whatever it is we're doing it for. So, now we know exactly how to get basically the ideas out of our head into a final product. We started with idea mapping. Well, we started with information gathering, moving on to idea mapping, and finally converted it to a linear form which is usable for whatever purposes we intended it for. As you can see, it's a pretty easy process to remember, and as long as you stick to the basic rules and general ideas behind it, fairly simple. So, do you think you can write the next essay? Speech? Maybe even you'll write a next bestseller. With the information gathered today from the creative writing process, only you will be able to answer that question. Thank you.